What is up everyone, Movie back again with another end of month vlog. This is just me talking about all the movies and TV shows that I watched in the month of April 2023. Now before I get into it, I'd just like to say, if you didn't already know, I do have a side channel that I started, which is mainly just based around horror and slash thriller content there, and that is titled Movie Squirm. Yes, my wife came up with that name. Now if you want to follow that channel, I'll leave the link down below in the description. I'm not asking you to subscribe if it's not your thing, you know, no offense taken. If you're into horror and you like watching me, or you're new to the channel and you like this video and horror is the genre that you kind of gravitate towards, maybe go over there, check it out. If you like what you see, give it a subscription and stuff. There's an Evil Dead ranking on there, Evil Dead Rise review, a top 10 horror openings, and my horror movie collection is on there as well. I'm not going to be doing too much physical media on there. It's mainly just going to be reviews and stuff, but I'll probably do that horror collection once a year or something like that. It just gives people a taste of what horror movies I'm into, etc. So the link for that channel is down below if you want to check it out. But let's just get into it now with the first thing that I watched this month, and that is Murder Mystery 2, starring Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston. And I enjoyed the first Murder Mystery. I like these Adam Sandler movies that have come to Netflix lately. They're harmless fun. I actually was one of them who actually found Hubie Halloween really funny, actually. And Murder Mystery was an okay-ish type film. It was just an easy popcorn flick that you can just sit back to, watch, and not have to, you know, get too deep into, apart from maybe guessing the killer. So I went into Murder Mystery 2 thinking that would be more of the same thing. And it was, but just not done as well as the first movie, in my opinion. The humour in this was the biggest problem of the film, because I found parts of the first one funny. This one, I didn't find it funny at all. In the attempts at humour, I was just finding myself with a straight face, kind of looking at the screen going, oh, is this meant to be funny? Kind of scratching my head there. The story wasn't as fun as the first movie. I kind of guessed the killer. It just wasn't... There was no heart to it, if you like. It was just, let's just dump this movie on Netflix. And I know that's these Happy Madison productions kind of do anyway. But it's kind of like, oh, the first one, a lot of people watched that. Let's just make a second one quickly. That's what I felt like. And it wasn't as good, even though the first one was bang average anyway. So that's the first film I watched this month. That is Murder Mystery 2. Next up, I watched a movie out of this box set. Now, please do get used to looking at this box set in this video, because I went through a lot of movies in the Fast and Furious franchise, and me and my wife started off with The Fast and the Furious. Now, that is the only one I had seen prior to this box set. I used to watch it religiously on DVD back in the day. And it's so weird that I hadn't watched the sequels to that, considering I was a fan of the first movie. And I've watched this again now. It must have been about 10 years since I actually did watch it last. And it's kind of not as good as I remember, but it's still a good movie. I think it's like a 7 out of 10 film. Basically a film about a bunch of street racers. Simple concept. And one of them is undercover, trying to bring down someone who is robbing these truckers that are going about in these fast cars, and he's trying to infiltrate the racers and find out who it is. My wife's brother said that he thinks this movie is exactly the same as Point Break, and I'd never looked at it that way before, but when he said that, I was like, my God, it is. So, yeah, it's the same type of plot with fast cars, if you like, but that is The Fast and the Furious. Next up, me and my wife watched Too Fast, Too Furious. I remember I'd seen snippets of this on the school bus to Disneyland when I was in like year 7 or 8, was I? I can't quite remember. It was in school anyway, and I was watching it on the bus, but I wasn't paying much attention. And I just could tell that it weren't really looking as good as the first movie. And you know what? I did have a good time with Too Fast, Too Furious. This introduced the character of Roman, played by Tyrese Gibson. And my God, he is my favourite character in this entire franchise. He is fantastic. He is so funny. Basically, this doesn't have Vin Diesel in. It's just him and Paul Walker trying to bring down this big drug lord. And Paul Walker's kind of wants Tyrese Gibson's help because he's a great driver and stuff like that. It's okay. It's not as good as the first one, but it's not a bad movie. It's just a little bit of a slight come down there. But I did enjoy it for what it was, and better than I expected it to be. So that is Too Fast, Too Furious. Getting away from the Fast and Furious franchise for a couple of movies coming up now. Next up, we had my new release of the month, and that is the Super Mario Brothers movie. I had a fantastic time with this. I was kind of nervous going in because I love the video games. I've been a Mario fan since the SNES days. And I was thinking, is this going to disappoint? Are Nintendo going to nail this? They're working with Illumination Studios, and I'm not the biggest fan of the Despicable Me movies. I think they're okay, but they're very, very kid-friendly. And I had a great time with it. I came out, and it was everything that I wanted from a Super Mario Brothers movie. I think everything they could have give you for the first time outing with Super Mario on the big screen, or second time outing, but we're not counting that live-action version. They delivered. This movie looked amazing. There were so many callbacks to the video games. I liked the way sometimes it went into 2D animation in some parts, for those nostalgic gamers there. And it is just the story of Mario trying to save Princess Peach from Bowser. All the voice work was great. Jack Black stole the show, in my opinion, with that Peaches song. That was so funny. The overall feeling of it was it delivered what I wanted. I just wish they didn't throw in some 80s and 90s songs there, like Take On Me by A1 and stuff, like very child-friendly pop tunes. They didn't need all that because the music they done with the Mario type theme tunes and stuff, with the mixes, that all works. So I just wish they would have kind of kept it like that. But yeah, great time. I loved all the Mario Kart stuff as well. They integrated other games into this, and kind of a little bit of like Luigi's Mansion, because he goes and gets lost in this kind of horror type land. So it was very, very cleverly done. It has passed $1 billion club now. It's part of that club, and I really hope Nintendo, I think they will. I think they've stated that they are gonna make more movies. I think they should play it safe with a second Mario Brothers movie first, get a lot of money behind it, and then go and make maybe a Zelda movie, a Metroid Prime movie. Doesn't all have to be child friendly. And by the way, even though this was a child friendly film, there was a lot for adults in there as well. So that is my new pick of the month, the Super Mario Brothers movie. Next up, I watched Air. Now, this is Matt Damon and Ben Affleck on the screen together once again. And when they are on the screen together, they just make it work, man. Ben Affleck is a great director, and this is another great film he has produced here. Basically, the story of Nike, who are kind of not doing too well compared to all the other fashion brands out there. And Matt Damon is sort of, his job is to try and sign upcoming athletes to wear the Nike gear, basically. And he's got his eye on Michael Jordan. And it's all the story of getting Michael Jordan to sign with Nike. And he kind of has no interest in it whatsoever. And we all know that it was a gigantic deal struck for someone who is just a rookie, basically. And it's a fascinating story, but what I loved about this is the comedy they threw in. It was such a fun movie to watch, even though it was just a kind of a straight line story, like kind of a serious story that really happened. But they made it fun and entertaining. All the characters were great. Chris Tucker, man, that man is comedy gold. I mean, it just always makes me laugh, and this was no exception. He's great in this as well. But like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon on screen together, again, it's like one of them stories like The Social Network or The Founder, the McDonald's movie, how big businesses come to light, and it really did work for me. I wasn't expecting too much, but I had an awesome time with it. One of my favourites of the year so far. So that is it. Next up, we have Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. I was expecting this to be the worst movie because I'd heard so many bad things about it. And you know what? It probably is my least favourite, but it's definitely a watchable film. I don't think it was that bad. And I probably would have given it a higher score on my Letterboxd. If you want to follow me, that is down below in the description. However, the main protagonist in this movie was absolutely dreadful. One of the worst main protagonists I've ever had to try and latch onto in a film. I just couldn't. I did not like the guy. His deep Texan accent was so off-putting. He was just an unlikable character. I just could not stand the guy. I really couldn't. And he thinks he's so cool in the movie, and all these women love him and stuff. And it's just like, I just can't get it. I can't get into that. I didn't believe that for a second. This is the character of Han, though, who is one of the better characters in the Fast and Furious franchise, in my opinion. And it was a good movie. It had a good first act, a good third act. It did lose me a little bit in the middle there, getting a little bit too dull a little bit there, but the two acts of 1 and 3 were great. So yeah, it's a very good film. Not a very good film, but it's a good film. The main protagonist just brought it down for me though, and my God, I hope he's not a big part in Fast 10 or anything like that. Yeah, Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift, not as bad as I thought it'd be. Next up we have Fast and Furious. I'd like to say 4, but it's just called Fast and Furious. I'd heard a lot of bad things about this one as well, and to be honest, I quite enjoyed this one. I think I liked it better than Fast and Furious and Tokyo Drift. It's a ridiculous ending, but basically we just see Paul Walker working for the FBI here, and I think he's got to team up with Vin Diesel in this one. Vin Diesel just has no trust with him and stuff. They're kind of forced into it. It's kind of the true sequel to the first movie, if you like. I quite enjoyed it, you know, but the ending was just like, I was just thinking that would never really happen. I mean, really? Yeah. But, and this is where it starts to get a little tiny bit ridiculous with the opening scene. There is a big, petrol tanker rolling down this hill, and Vin Diesel drives towards it, and as it bounces off the ground, Vin Diesel rides under it as it bounces over him. Yeah, and I thought, oh, this is where it starts getting a little bit ridiculous. However, that is nothing compared to what is to come in the later movies. But yeah, it is probably the true sequel to the first one. I enjoyed it for what it was. So yeah, that is Fast and Furious. Next up, we have a movie called Fracture. I've owned this one for quite some time in my Blu-ray collection. Big fan of Anthony Hopkins and Ryan Gosling. And this was a really cool movie. This is about Anthony Hopkins. He's basically killed his wife. We see it for ourselves in the opening couple of scenes. This guy kills his wife. No doubt about it. And Ryan Gosling is on his last case. He's going to move to a bigger law firm soon. So he just kind of accepts this one and went, oh, this will be done in a couple of weeks. I'll put this guy to bed, to jail for life. And it'll be so easy. It's just he blatantly killed her. And it's not as easy as he thinks. Anthony Hopkins is planning all this out from the start. He has things that he thinks will get him off with it. He represents himself in court. It's all a big game to him. And Ryan Gosling, who is this hotshot lawyer, just cannot seem to find all the right evidence to put him away. And I'm not going to say too much more than that, but it is definitely a good unraveling as the film goes on, the third act, where it all comes together and stuff, and they're sort of playing off against each other, who's going to win this little courtroom battle. It was a fun movie, a good drama film, and 2 good performances here from 2 great actors. So I do recommend this film. If you've heard of it or anything, if you like courtroom dramas, it definitely works. That is Fracture. Next up, I watched The Pope's Exorcist. This movie was just not for me. I mean, look, I love horror. I even like most of the subgenres. However, demon possession is probably one of my least favourite subgenres of the horror. But when they're done right, I can get on board with it. The Last Exorcism, The Exorcist, of course. But so many of them just do the same thing. And The Pope's Exorcist does that same thing. And when these exorcism movies do that, I just kind of have no interest. And I thought this one might have been a little bit different, but it wasn't. This took every single trope from The Exorcist that it could. It was like watching that movie in a modern age. Russell Crowe definitely saved the film. I thought he was a great character to get behind as this priest who goes around doing these exorcisms. But as the movie went on, in the second act especially, this kid who's possessed is just shouting obscenities, like Reagan in The Exorcist, saying to these priests how much of a bad past they've had and knows everything about their backstory, about some bad things they've done, like Reagan in The Exorcist. And basically, it's just this kid shouting this mad shit out of his mouth with all this stupid demonic dialogue. And the third act just kind of bored me to tears. I mean, the whole movie was boring. There were some bad performances. I didn't care about any of the characters. It was only really Russell Crowe who I latched onto, and he is the biggest positive about the film for me. But I'm not even just saying it because he's a big actor. He really was good in this movie, and he carried it. But overall, this is the dullest horror movie of the year so far for me. And I recently watched something else, which you'll see at the end of the video, and I actually got more entertainment from that film than this in the horror genre. It just bored me. I think sometimes movies that bore you are the worst for me personally. So yeah, that is The Pope's Exorcist. I do not recommend this movie. Next up, we have The Fast and the Furious 5, or Fast 5, whatever you want to call it. This was definitely the highlight of the franchise so far. I'd heard this was the best one, and it was up to now. This introduces The Rock as this cop, Luke Hobbs, who's trying to take down Vin Diesel and Paul Walker, who've gone on the run now after Fast and Furious 4. Like I said, that was a bit of a ridiculous end, and I just don't know why Paul Walker would do that, but whatever, it's just a movie. And this basically turned into a bit of a Mission Impossible film, and I was just kind of taken away by that. I was not taken away, I was sort of surprised, if you like, by that. I just thought this was going to be another racing movie, but this has Vin Diesel and a team with Paul Walker and all these other characters. Tyrese came back into this one, Roman, and got Ludacris in there. It's just a cool team to have. Gal Gadot and stuff. And they kind of have to try and break into this police station. But honestly, it was just a nice welcome change for the franchise. And I really enjoyed this movie. This almost got my older pick of the month. But I had such a good time with this. It was just great seeing all these characters bounce off each other. Roman is such a funny character, and he bounces off Ludacris really well. Vin Diesel is the worst actor I've ever seen, but he suits this movie so well. Yeah, I had a great time with this. Lots of great action in there. It was just an awesome film. It really was, and it's worth watching the Fast and Furious franchise for this movie alone. I had a great time with it, so that is Fast 5. Next up, we are going to have my older pick of the month, and that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Sorry about that plaster there. I did cut myself yesterday, and it hasn't stopped bleeding since. But yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from Second Sight on 4K. Now, I have given this my older pick of the month before, because I've watched it on 4K, and it's a little bit of a new picture quality. I'm going to give it my older pick of the month again. Quite simply, the greatest horror film ever made, in my opinion. I spoke about this many times on the channel. I just love how realistic it is, how creepy, scary, and well documented it is. It's just an awesome film. That opening where the guy says, this is like one of the biggest crimes in American history, and it feels the realism is thrown in there straight away. The cinematography, I'm noticing more and more as I watch this movie, how good it is. It's just an incredible film. And Leatherface, what a character he is, and his family of goons, really. I really enjoyed the hitchhiker in this a lot more this time. I realised that it's probably the best performance of the film when I look back on it, because he's just such a weirdo. He's such a weird character. But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for me, I will be amazed if anything beats this to my favourite horror movie ever until I die. It's just something that gets better every single time I watch it, and the 4K looked brilliant. So I'm very, very happy to own this set. If you want to see an unboxing of this, it is on the channel. I'll leave it in the link down below. But that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on 4K. Next up, I watched The Fast and the Furious 6. Now, this was a pretty good film. It just wasn't as good as The Fast 5, because it kind of suffered from that sequel thing of doing the same thing, basically. Vin Diesel gets a team together and tries to take down the bad guy, and it just followed a lot of the same things as Fast 5 did, apart from bringing Michelle Rodriguez back. That was the one little thing that they threw in there, and she's working for someone else. That was the little twist on things. And that was interesting, to be honest. I kind of liked where that was going with Vin Diesel and Letty, her name is in the film. But yeah, it just followed a lot of the same things, basically. But it was interesting to see this in my hometown of Liverpool. They filmed a lot of this in the city centre, and I noticed a lot of that. They filmed a lot of it in the Mersey Tunnel, noticed a lot of that. And the tank scene was pretty good towards the end. So yeah, one of the best third acts in the entire franchise, I will give it that, but not a bad film at all. Another good entry, and that is The Fast and Furious 6. Next up, I watched Hell of the Living Dead. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys here. I did fall asleep a couple of times during this film, only for a couple of minutes, but I feel like I hate when I do that during films, because I feel like I need to watch it again, especially this lovely 4K edition from 88 Films here. And this is also going by the name of Zombie Creeping Flesh, Virus. There's a load of movie names for this, but in England, I think it's known as Hell of the Living Dead. I think this was a video nasty as well, and this is basically just an Italian zombie movie where an outbreak happens in a power plant, and then the zombies go around, and you know the gist. Really reminded me of Zombie Flesh Eaters, with the music in the background and stuff as the zombies are taking people out and walking around. There's a kid zombie in here and everything, but the acting is not very good in this movie at all. And there was something in the middle there that really brought the movie down a lot for me. They're basically in the middle of this tribe village, and when they're looking at all the tribes, it's just stock footage that they've used from documentaries and stuff. It doesn't feel like the characters are there. It just feels like they're looking at a TV screen, and then all these pictures of tribes and animals in the jungle will come up. It just totally ruined the film for me. But there is some good parts that happen in the first and third act. Lots of gore, great zombie design at times. There is a killer at the end of the movie that is just batshit insane, with eyes popping out and stuff. But I didn't love the film. The acting took it out for me, and that big middle act took it out for me as well. There's some terrible acting in this movie, though. But I'd like to watch it again. I'm going to watch it again, and maybe I have a plan to review a lot of video nasties on the other channel. So I'm going to give this one another go, especially that I've spent a lot of money on this 4K, and I feel like I haven't fully watched the film yet. But it wasn't bad. Wasn't great either. So that is Hell of the Living Dead. Next up, I watched Renfield, starring Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult. I've just realised they're both called Nicholas there. Wow, saying it out loud. I thought this was going to be a very average movie, a typical horror comedy, but I was actually really surprised how good this film was. Nicolas Cage as Dracula is enough to get me in there, but Nicholas Hoult from The Menu last year put a great performance in, and they are on screen together, and it's like, it really does work, because Nicolas Cage is like this narcissist boss, and Nicholas Hoult is terrified of him, and they're both chalk and cheese, but it works on screen together. And Nicholas Hoult kind of wants to go and live his own life now. He's been a servant to this Dracula guy for years, and Dracula just kind of won't let him go. And he's kind of this narcissist, and I feel like it got the messages of narcissism across really well in the film. If people have ever suffered anxiety from a narcissist or whatever, I do feel like you could relate to this film. The blood is great on screen. There's so much gore, and it balances the horror and comedy very well, because the horror elements are definitely there, because Dracula is really evil in this. Even though he's coming out with loads of great one-liners and stuff, he is evil as fuck in this movie. He is just all for himself, self. There was a couple of animated side villains in this that feel very cartoonish and stupid, but I suppose that fits the theme of horror comedy now, doesn't it? But yeah, you totally get on Renfield's side. And Awkwafana's in this movie, and I thought she was kind of a fun character. I've kind of heard people say that she is annoying and stuff, but she kind of worked for me. I thought she was good as this side love interest, if you like, for Nicholas Hoult. So yeah, Renfield is a very surprising film. Horror fans will definitely love this. Horror comedy fans will love it even more. I highly recommend it. I had a great time with Renfield. Next up, we have the Evil Dead remake. I wanted to rewatch this because I watched 1, 2, and 3 not long ago, and I hadn't seen this one for a couple of years, so I rewatched it, mainly for more thoughts on my ranking video that I done on the other channel. This is my favourite Evil Dead movie. I love the cinematography in it, what Fede Alvarez done with this in the director's chair. He just took his own version of that original classic and just ran with it. Like, he didn't do horror comedy, he just went, I'm going to go full horror here, and he made the ultimate horror Cabin in the Woods movie, in my opinion. Demon design is great. It's just got a great final girl in Mia there, who's suffering from addiction, which kind of plays into the story as well. And I think he wrote that well to interweave with the character, because they don't want to let her leave because she's going cold turkey. So that's a reason for them to all stay in the cabin and stuff. The gore on screen is great. There's arms hanging off by one little tendon. It rains blood at one point. I love this movie. I've seen it twice now and I loved it each time, and it is my favourite Evil Dead film. So I had to go and see this just before the Evil Dead Rise. So Evil Dead 2013, awesome horror remake. And you could guess what's coming up next. That is The Evil Dead Rise. I was highly anticipating this movie. I was interested to see how they were going to take this film and put it into an apartment block in the city, and it totally worked. Even though I do wish they utilised the apartment block a little bit more, I can see why on one hand it didn't, on one hand it did, because this family are kind of stuck in the room for most of the movie, and it feels like an Evil Dead film because instead of the cabin, they're stuck in this apartment room, and that doesn't really let it utilise the apartment complex too well, but it does pick it up a bit more in the third act when one of our characters is sort of going around this apartment. So they did claw it back a little bit there, but enough on the location. Alicia Sutherland was great as this main demonite here, the mother of the family, brings a family dynamic in there and introduces kids as well that could be in trouble, which is always a dangerous line to cross, but family turn on each other because one thing that matters in life is family, and when they're turned against each other, it could have ill effects, basically. The demon design was great in this. Some great blood and gore on screen. A cheese grater is used, for God's sake, to shed some blood. I just thought this was an awesome modern horror movie, and the final girl, like Mia in this again, was great. It's everything that an Evil Dead movie should be, and if it just had everything. The feeling of isolation, the blood on characters' faces, the chainsaw, it's all in there. And there was something that happened in the third act with the demonites that I kind of didn't see coming, and I thought it was pretty awesome. So Evil Dead Rise, definitely one of my favourite horror movies of the year so far, and one of my favourite movies. I do recommend it. That is The Evil Dead Rise. Next up we have The Fast and Furious 7. This was definitely better than Part 6 for me. Kind of picked it up again there. It was weird to watch because I knew it was Paul Walker's last film, and there was moments where you could see him kind of integrated into the screen a little bit there, but I just had a great time once again with this movie. This one introduced Jason Statham as well into this one, and he was a great character, and he's kind of a pain in the ass, basically, to Vin Diesel and his team. But there's some great sequences in this, especially where they go driving backwards out of the plane, and after this thing called there's something eye where it can just basically find anyone in the world. So they're doing another like Mission Impossible type deal here, where Vin Diesel's getting his team together to go and secure that. But there is some ridiculous moments in this. Like I said, the cars driving out the plane with parachutes on and stuff. But it was a great fun time. I'll take that all day. I don't mind watching films like that. I go to the movies to escape, and it is is it a guilty pleasure? I don't know. They're not great movies. They're not fantastic masterpieces or anything, these films, but they're fun. And I kind of can't wait for Fast X now. But yeah, a great tribute to Paul Walker at the end. I was kind of choking a little bit there. I felt so bad for the guy. They really sent him off well in this movie, and the overhead shot where him and Vin Diesel kind of go their separate ways. Yeah, man, that was heartbreaking stuff. But Fast and Furious 7, along with 5, are probably the best two in the franchise so far for me. So that is Fast and Furious 7. Next up, I watched The Mandalorian Season 3. I was highly anticipating this show. The Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 are the strongest Star Wars shows for me. And some of my favourite Star Wars stuff in that franchise overall, including the movies, I just love the character of the Mandalorian, played by Pedro Pascal. I love the way he just goes on these little missions each episode and collects a bounty, and then the next episode does the same thing. And I've seen a lot of people saying it's starting to get a bit repetitive and stuff, but for me, I was enjoying that. And this series tries to integrate a lot more story going into it, and I haven't got a problem with that, but the execution just kind of didn't work for me. I had a couple of strong opening episodes, but my God, man, episode 6 and 7, especially 6, were kind of dreadful. Episode 6 is the worst Mandalorian episode I think I've ever seen. The one with Jack Black in, and I forgot the woman's name. My wife pointed it out. I had no idea who she was. And it was just so boring. And Christopher Lloyd was totally wasted in this episode. And then 7 didn't really pick it up more. The final episode was okay. But I just kind of ended on a sour note with this series. Me and my wife kind of didn't want to watch the last episode. We were like, oh, them last two weren't very good, was they? But we feel like we've got to watch it now to end the season. And it's just such a come down for the series. I mean, 1 and 2 seasons were so strong, and this one was so average. Couple of strong episodes in there. Episode 5, where the pirates come to where Carl Weathers' character. I forgot his name in the show already. Sorry, that was probably the best episode in the entire show, in the entire season. Sorry, but it was just a mismatch, and yeah, wasn't great for me, unfortunately, which is a shame. But I hope in season 4 they kind of just go back to the roots and do what they were doing in season 1 and 2, and it does hint at that towards the end. So hopefully that is the direction they go in for season 4, because that's kind of what I just like to watch The Mandalorian for. That is The Mandalorian season 3. A little bit of a disappointment there. Next up, I watched Power Rangers Once and Always. This is only a 55-minute movie special, whatever you want to call it. And I used to watch this religiously as a kid, so I was definitely going to give this a go. And it had a couple of the main actors coming back in Billy, and I think his name's Zach. I can't quite remember. Like, I think the Red Ranger was played by another guy in a different series and stuff, so it was a little bit mismatched there. This was so bad. I had a slightly good time with it because I could relate to some nostalgia with this show. And it was bringing back all the memories of how ridiculous the show was with the robot and Zordon, even though Zordon kind of wasn't in this, but the way they can just turn into the Power Rangers with, this little thing they press on the watch, and they've got that Triceratops and all this crap. And they get in these big, gigantic monster mechs at the end and stuff. I can't explain how bizarre this is. I mean, if you were stoned watching this, you wouldn't quite believe what you were seeing. The acting was awful. It was just so bad. But I could relate to it a little bit with the nostalgia, and I did have a slight good time with it. But there is so many problems with this that I don't recommend it, even if you're a Power Rangers fan. Maybe give it a go. But man, it was really bad. I kind of just watching it thinking, why have they made this? But that is Power Rangers Once and Always. Next up is that horror movie I was talking about that I enjoyed a little bit more than The Pope's Exorcist, and it is a little bit of a different subgenre of horror, but that is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't a very good film. I went in expecting the absolute worst. Everyone has given this half a star on Letterboxd and stuff, and I just thought this is going to be the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen, but I have to watch it. And I was kind of surprised that I enjoyed it a little bit more than I thought I would. Yes, it's not a very good movie. It's terribly acted. Amber Doig-Thorne, I think her name is. She was about the best actress in the movie, the main protagonist. The guy who played Christopher Robin in this was awful. And this is basically about him going to college and pissing off Pooh and Piglet because he'd left them in the woods. So Pooh and Piglet go out and just start killing folk who come into the woods. And Amber Doig-Thorne's character and her friends come to the woods just to get away from everything. It's your typical slasher in the woods movie. However, I was very surprised by how brutal this was. There is so much carnage on screen. It's so many creative kills as well. I will give it that. Like, people, heads getting run over and stuff, and just so many brutal stabbing kills and stuff. There was a moment as well where a slow motion shot where Piglet just whacked this big sledgehammer over someone's head, and I was like, whoa, that kind of look cool. I don't think this movie is as bad as everyone's saying it is, but it's not a very good film, put it that way. I give it 2.5 on Letterboxd. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a full review for this on my horror channel, so look out for that. So that is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And finally, we do have The Fast and the Furious 8. Now, this definitely came down a little bit more in the franchise. I was giving most of these movies 3.5, 4. This one, actually, I give a 3 on my Letterboxd. Just because it goes a little bit too comedic, a little bit too slapstick, a little bit too ridiculous. And I like movies like that, I said, but it kind of knows what it is now, and it knows it's ridiculous, and it plays on it a lot. But yeah, it wasn't a bad film. You know, I enjoyed it. It's doing the same thing over and over again here now. There's a cool submarine part at the end of the movie. That was awesome. A great third act. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The fate of the Furious. And this is the one where Vin Diesel kind of turned into a bad guy there, which was interesting. And we find out a little bit more out about his family, if you like. Charlize Theron was a good villain in this. I quite enjoyed her. She was kind of brutal and took no shit off anyone. So yeah, interesting concept to throw Vin Diesel on the other side of things there, kind of like Letty was in Fast 5. But yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. That is the fate of the Furious, or Fast 8, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Okay guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Next month I'll probably be talking about Hobbs and Shaw and Fast and Furious 9 and Fast X. So they're the only 3 Fast and Furious movies you've got to worry about next month. Sorry there was a lot of that franchise there, but me and my wife just can't stop watching it. We're really having a good time with it. What did you think of these movies I watched this month? If you want more end of month vlogs, they'll be down below as well. Don't forget to leave a comment and I'll try and get back to you all, I promise. Please give this video a like and subscribe. It would really help me out. Thanks so much. Take it all easy. And I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.